Hi, I'm Judy. Welcome to my channel, and if you're returning, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for coming back. I hope that my previous videos have been enjoyable for you and that this one will be equally enjoyable. Today I'm continuing the building the furniture in my craft room kind of series that I've been running. I've posted one video, but I have other videos that are in the process of being made, and today I'm hoping that I can show you my Tower of Kallax, as I fondly call it. It's not really Kallax because Ikea don't carry the configuration that I was looking for. This one is from Bunnings, which is our equivalent of, I guess, Lowe's or Walmart. It's a big box superstore that sells everything that you could ever need and a whole bunch of things you don't, and it's become my second home. But I have built what I hope is going to solve the problem, and I hope that I can explain to you my reasoning behind why I've done what I've done, and that the video will make sense to you, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Okay, so my problem isn't really a problem at all. It's the way I've set up the studio. I have these two Billy bookcases that I brought with me from England, from my old studio, which was probably triple the size of this space, maybe only double. And I've put these in and facing each other so that I can utilize as much vertical space as possible. And then I had this idea, there was this little bit of my head that was going, okay, maybe what we could do is have like a little rolling line of Billy bookcases that would roll backwards and forwards. And I looked into the idea of doing that, and the chances of pulling something off like that without spending a huge amount of money was very slim. So I had to put the halts to that. So my first idea was maybe I could do this out of Kallaxes. If I got two 2x4 Kallaxes and put casters on the bottom of both of them, and then hinged them together and put handles on the ends of them, then I could fold them up and roll them into that space and pull them out. But the drawback with this was that they were only going to be 144 centimetres tall, which didn't fill my criteria of utilising vertical storage to its best of its abilities. And they were going to be 145 centimetres wide when they were opened and pulled out, which would take up an awful lot of floor space. But at 78 centimetres when closed, I thought it was going to work, and then I got into things about the casters clashing and all sorts of things. Then I went down a second idea, and this idea was much easier to fit into my car too. If I went for a whole bunch of 2x2s and two 2x1s and stacked them in two towers, I could then put little bits of wood in between them, which would give me some long shallow shelving. Then I could put casters on the bottom, put handles on the outside, not hinge them down the middle, and then that would give me 200 centimetres tall of storage space. Each unit would only be 76 centimetres wide. They could be rolled out independently from each other, and the 78 centimetre wide would still be fine in between those two Billy bookcases. So the first step was to attach some plinths onto the bottom of the unit that would become the base. These are just simple bits of pine that I have cut to size and painted, and now I'm drilling them into as much of the structural integrity of the unit as I can. I'm using 70 kilo per casters from Bunnings, and then I've just put these on as far out onto the corner as I possibly can, penciled holes, drilled some pilot holes, and screwed them in place. If you'd like more detail about how I fitted casters onto the bottom of an actual Kallax, please have a look at my video, Ikea Kallax hacks, fitting casters, which I will put a link to in the description box below. Okay, we're back for another day, and I'm about to start installing the next unit. We've got the unit with the casters on it here, and I'm about to install the next unit on top. So another 2x2 on top. I am not using the Kallax, I'm using the Clever Cube storage by Clever Cube unit by Flexi Storage, because Ikea in Australia no longer do a 1x2 Kallax, and that's what I want for the top of mine. So I'm working with this stuff, which is from Bunnings, and the only difference is it's a centimetre, it's 760 centimetres, sorry, 760 millimetres wide and 760 millimetres high, and the Kallax is 77 by 77. So it makes no difference. The sidewalls are slightly not quite as thick as the Kallax. So that's what I'm doing. So for this bit, you're going to need, I have a piece of, I believe this is 40 millimetres wide, approximately, by 30 millimetres. Let's get this right. So it's, yeah, 30 millimetres. And I cut it down into 39 centimetre lengths, and then painted the outside surfaces that will be seen white. I have a scrap of wood for drilling into so that I don't damage anything that I don't want to damage. I've got a ruler, a pencil, 2 clamps. I have all of the bits and pieces for to put the Flexi Storage unit together, ready to go. I have a bunch of wooden dowels that are 8 millimetres across, and I picked these up from Ikea from their spare parts section, which in Australia you make a gold coin donation and you can pick up a bag of stuff. So that's either $1 or $2. I have a drill, obviously. I have an 8 millimetre drill bit that goes with the wooden dowels, and then I have a 3 millimetre drill bit that will be my pilot holes for the screws to go down to. I have a set of countersink drill bits, and I will use this one, which is the 2.8 millimetre piece, to achieve what I want to achieve. And then, just in case I need it, I've got a pokey thing that I can poke down into the hole and mark into the top of the Kallax. I think that's all that I need right now. I have a few other bits and pieces on hand that I might need to bring into the frame, but that's basically what we're working with. Okay, I've ruled a line across the edge just to the outside of the screw holes, which works out to be 1.3 centimetres from the edge. So then I've measured in 1.3 centimetres from the corner on either end, and then I've done one in the middle. Then I measured, which was 195 millimetres. So I then I measured between this point and this point, which came to 180 millimetres, and I marked off at the midpoint of that one there, and then the midpoint. So these are the 5 spaces where I will eventually drill down into the Kallax, or I'll let the screws pop down into the Kallax. I might do a pilot hole to be sure. I'm going to replicate those marks on the top of this piece of wood. They will be 1.3 centimetres in from the edge, and then I will mark a hole appropriately. And I will drill a 3 millimetre hole down into the wood, and it will go all the way through this piece of wood, which is 40 millimetres deep. Then I will use the countersink drill bit to start off a hole in the top of this, and then I will drill halfway down with the 8mm bit so that I have kind of a deep countersink. So in the final design, the way that it will be screwed down is this batten will sit on top flush with the edge of the unit, like so. There will be some screws that will descend down through this batten into the top of the unit, and then I will insert 5 of those wooden dowels into those 5 holes and glue them in. And that's, I think, as far as I'm going to explain what I'm doing right now. Eventually I will drill 5 corresponding holes in the bottom of the next unit that's going on. That will then also conform to this measurement regime that I've set up here, so that when I flip it over, it will sit down on those wooden dowels, which will then be glued in space. I hope that makes sense. Hopefully me showing you will make even more sense. Okay, slight flaw in the plan. My drilling, if you've watched my previous videos, is not as accurate as it could be. You know, I'd need a drill press in order to get it perfectly accurate. So what I have done is I've screwed the screws part way down into the wood, and you can see them just sticking out here. These are going to be my markers, because you can see I tried here and I really stuffed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down, I'm going to whack it so it makes marks in the top. Then I'm going to pre-drill some holes in probably a 2mm drill bit, maybe even a 1.5, just enough to allow the screw to descend without me having to use too much wrist strength. So I will film that bit for you. Seems to fit. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do basically the same thing that I did on the top of this. I'm going to mark a pencil line along here and measure out where the holes are going to end up. And then, because I don't trust my pinpoint accuracy again, I'm just going to start those holes with the little drill bit and then mark them bigger, make them bigger with the 8mm. Okay, it's these two holes that are doing most of the work. These three holes, as you saw, the drill just plunges straight through the wood because there's nothing, it literally stops just there. So I'm going to dry fit and make sure that I've got enough depth on these two holes to take the unit. Okay, so now all I have to do is repeat that whole process on the other side. Okay, so that's all drilled up and ready for me to glue and put into place, but I can't put this into place until I build the 4x4, and I need to prep the top of this because it's going to be up here for me to work on. So what I want to do is I want to prep as much of the 2x1 that will go up the top here and the 2x2 that I'm working on right now, as much as possible before I construct them. So tomorrow I will come back and do the prep for the 2x1 and finish this one and then build them all. Okay? Okay, I've assembled the 2x2 unit that we drilled yesterday, and the bits that's got all of the holes in it is there at the bottom. So it's currently sitting the correct way up, and I'm about to do the top bit here. So this is pretty much a replica of what I did yesterday. I'm going to drill holes in here and fit the wood and etc. The slight difference is that the 2x1 cube system sits the other way on the top. So I needed to have this be the top in order for the structural integrity to be right. In my opinion, I needed to be able for it to be able to take the weight in the center, and I felt this was the best way around. But for the 2x1 it's not so important because it's a smaller unit and it sits on the top. So instead of drilling into the side, the top of the, in order for me to, instead of me drilling on the opposite side of this, what we see here, I will be drilling in through here to get them to stick. That might actually be a better way of doing it because this is solid here. So it might be a more secure way of doing it. But my plan is to not talk, just film this and probably speed it up so that you don't spend all of the time. But this is all the stuff I need. So I've got all the bits for putting the 2x1 unit together, a pencil, a ruler for marking up the board, my 2 pieces of wood that are 39 centimeters long and 40 centimeters tall that will act as the shelves. I've got a countersink drill bit. I've got my big drill with its 8mm drill bit in it, and I've got a 3mm drill bit sitting here. I've got some clamps, I've got a piece of waste wood, and I have my Dremel set up with I think it's a 2mm drill bit in it so that I can drill pilot holes. I hope that'll make sense. Oh, and I've got my electric drill there, and then my hundreds of screws to be able to screw it all down. I hope that'll make sense. I hope it'll make more sense when it's played through. So I'm using this 2x2 now as kind of my vise, if you like, for marking and drilling this. Principle is going to be the same. I'm going to measure 13 millimeters in from the edge, draw a line, mark the 5 holes, drill the 5 holes, and hope that it all works out. It looks as though it'll all match up, so it'll be fine. Okay, this is now taller than my tripod will go, so I hope that an explanation is going to be enough. As you can see, we have at the bottom the one with the casters, the one in the middle is the 4 cube, and then the 2 cube's going to go on top, and I'm going to show you how I managed to get the 4 cube on top by doing the 2 cube. I did some bashing around, and I will point out to you that I made a mistake and I now have a hole in the bottom. I will cover that with vinyl so that it is not seen, but it won't affect the functioning of the actual unit. So what I'm going to do is, this is where there are 5 holes in the top of the unit on both ends. So I'm going to insert the wood dowels into those holes. Then I'm going to pick up the 2x1 unit that is sitting here on the desk. I'm going to flip it over and put it on top there. Before I do that though, I will put a small amount of glue onto the tops of the wooden dowels so that as they slide into the unit, the holes get coated with a bit of glue, just enough to kind of add a little bit more rigidity. And then I expect I will have to do what I had to do with the 2x2, which is to hammer it down into place. It's not graceful, but it worked. So let's give it a shot. put the handles in place, I needed to create a template. So I took an A3 sheet of paper and folded it in half to give myself a good, solid place to work. Then I measured down how far I wanted the handle to sit in the middle of the shelf. I decided to use the pine bits that I had marked for the shelf. I then cut the length of paper to 39 centimetres so that I knew precisely how the template matched the unit. Then I marked the centre in the template so that I could match that up with the centre of the unit. I then attached the screws into the handle, turned the handle upside down so that the screws were in line with my guideline, and then marked a pencil mark on either side of those screws so I knew precisely where to drill. Okay, so I've marked the centre of this cabinet and I've got my template here. I'm going to line up that centre mark on the piece of paper with the centre mark on the cabinet. And now I'm just going to check to make sure that that line is level. It's good enough. So now I want a hole here and here. And I think I want it to be a bit bigger than 2 mil. I'm going to use my Dremel tool because I've got more control. At least that's what I find with my Dremel tool, so let's give it a shot. Now I just need to drill those holes through. Now I got these handles from Bunnings and they come with these screws. And the idea is that depending on the depth of where your handles are to go, you get your angle grinder out or your jigsaw or something and you trim off the knobs that you don't need. What I have found so far is that these are almost exactly the right depth for this purpose. Hole's not big enough. Again. Okay, so I've moved up to a 3.5mm drill bit to see if that's going to make a hole big enough. So we'll see. And I'm now having to use my drill because the Dremel can't take a 3.5mm drill bit. Let's see if that works. Nope. Okay, so there's your answer. If you're buying these handles from Bunnings, 4mm your dream. have a scatter pegboard that is going to hang on here, so I'm going to fit that now. all done. And I've created 2 of these towers, as I said at the beginning. So this is the 2 of them in place. They fill the space really nicely. They're tall enough that I feel as though I'm utilising as much vertical space as I can without them being so tall that I could never get up to reach stuff off them. They pull out really smoothly and they are just fantastic for storage. In this one, I've got the 2 cabinets. I've got 2 baskets down at the bottom that are slightly see-through. I've got a bunch of these plastic drawers that I can put stamps into. I've actually moved my vinyl into a different solution on the other Kallax, on the one that you've just seen me construct. And then at the end of the day, when I'm all done and dusted, it all just smoothly rolls back into space. On this one, which is the one that you've watched me build, I've now turned those cabinets so that they're around the other way. But again, I've got the 2 baskets at the bottom. I've got slightly bigger plastic bins. And then I've got all this storage, and those slim, long shelves are proving to be incredibly functional. I cannot tell you how smooth these are to move. Right, so this is the other Tower of Kallax. Now, the one difference is it has a Scottish pegboard on the end. I am going to get another pegboard from Ikea and install that on the other one so that they are identical. The big difference in this one is that I have lined the inside of these 2 cubes with black velvet, and I think this is where some of my bottles that might possibly leak will go, on the basis that the felt will soak up some of the stuff that leaks and keep it neat. But these, if you recall, this is where I punched through on both of these, so that's to cover up that mistake. But again, I replaced the knobs on these with the crystal knobs, and again had to cut the screws down in order to fit because they were too deep. Now, I have had some concerns expressed from some people who pointed out to me that when you buy the Kallax units from Ikea, once they start to get tall, like the 2x4, if you put that so that it's standing up on the 2 side and the 4 tall, Ikea very strongly recommend that you attach it to the wall to prevent tip over. Well, I understand everyone's concern with that. I will hasten to point out this is not a child-friendly room. It's not supposed to be, and there will never be children in here unsupervised, because I have harsh chemicals and sharp things, and I don't want my friends' children to be hurt. My 12-year-old may come in with me from time to time, but she's actually an incredibly sensible child, and I can tell you now, she certainly doesn't climb furniture. She never did, because that was taught to her as being a very bad thing to do, but also she's 12 and a lot more sensible now. The other thing that I think makes these feel incredibly stable. When I roll them around, they feel very, very, very stable. I would have to work quite hard to pull. I would actually have to climb one in order to pull it over on me. And I think one of the reasons that they are so solid is because when I put the casters on, not only did I put them on a little plinth of wood to add that little bit of extra security on the bottom, but I also put the casters on the furthest edges that I could possibly fit them. So these things are really rock solid, and yeah, I can shove them around and they're really good. The other thing is I don't have carpet on the floor here. I have laminate floors. So let me see if I can scroll this down so that you can see. See, I have laminate floors, so there's really not any risk of these things moving anywhere. Well, that's it for the Tower of Kallax. I hope you found this very useful. I've had so much fun building all of the furniture in this room. I'm now, I think, finished on building furniture. So it's now just a case of bringing everything that I've got that is out in the garage and finding a home for it. I have a printer that I need to try and get working, and because it's been sitting in storage. And then I've got my sublimation printer to set up, and I have my tower of wardrobe to fill up with stuff, and just finding a home for everything. And I suspect I will be buying more containers because that's a thing. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I hope you found it very useful. Maybe it'll spark an idea or two for you in your studio space. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.